So I was lying in Shavasana when my consciousness popped out of my body, and all of a sudden I was aware that my awareness wasn't attached to my body anymore. The only way I can describe it is I was everything at once. So I was a mountain, I was the sky, I was a tree, I was a bird, I was a fish, I was the ocean. I was everything, right? So it was this embodiment of just.
KB, Karen Bell, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Trey. It's fun. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. I hope everything works out nicely because I'm traveling and having to sit outside and where the kids aren't. So the internet is a
Yes.
little wonky, but we'll make it. We'll make through.
We'll cross our fingers. I think it's great because you probably have vacation vibes right now, and that's always a good
Yeah.
thing.
I'm definitely deep into the parasympathetic mode and of the nervous system, so I'm like relaxed and kind of
That's good.
nothing really bothering me at the moment. So it's nice.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm sure that'll come through.
Absolutely. So, Karen, I wanted to bring you on the show because I was listening to your story. I'm sure you've told it 1,000 times, but I just
Hmm.
find it so fascinating how one connects with different intelligence or consciousness and then allow it to kind of take over the vessel to bring forth a message. And it didn't really hit me until like I've been diving deeper into the ET contact disclosure. Um,
Hmm.
information and content that's been being released right now with government agencies and just all that. And it hit me while I was driving home the other day of like I don't know if you're tied in at all or read into some of the interviews on YouTube about like Jake Barber and some of the down craft that they have recovered and some of the vehicle technology and the biologics they have inside and like Dinah Pasulka and some of the other tip of the spear on disclosure agents are basically saying they're finding biologics that aren't really attached or like being used like sovereign conscious beings. They're just like
Hmm.
vehicles and
Okay,
bodies.
interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, it's weird. So you'll have the down craft, and then you'll have like a biologic inside, like maybe an avatar that
Hmm.
isn't associated with like a distinct consciousness. And I
Hmm.
thought that was fascinating because it's like, what if someone from somewhere else is controlling that
Hmm.
avatar who's controlling the vehicle, and they're moving in and out of our solar system or dimension, and it's kind of like what channels do. And that's what
Yes.
it really came home for me. It was like, oh, okay, like so the government is finding these down craft, they're finding these bodies inside the craft that aren't conscious. I don't know if they're
Hmm.
dead, but like they're just not conscious.
Hmm.
Maybe these interdimensional beings are using these biologics to navigate the craft, and they're transferring their consciousness to that.
Hmm.
And maybe this is what channelers are doing too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that completely. I would push it even further to say that's what all of us are doing in a sense, because the way that, so the being that I channel, her name is Sarai, just so that everyone is clear when I'm talking about Sarai. But the way that Sarai describes it is that all of us, like what we think of as our identity, is actually just, she refers to it as a human avatar. So for example, you are the human avatar Trey, but your consciousness is non-local. So in other words, your consciousness or your soul is actually projecting itself through your avatar. So people don't tend to think of it that way, but in a sense that's what we are all doing. And then when you bring it to channeling, what a channeler is doing is just moving their consciousness to the side momentarily so that another consciousness can broadcast through this vessel that is the human construct. So that is, pushing it even further, but the reason that's liberating is because we tend to get very wrapped up in what we think of as our human identity, right? We think we are these bodies, and we think we are our minds. And so when you can sort of step back from that and start to sense yourself as the witnessing consciousness or the soul, then what happens is you start to be able to liberate yourself from the, Sarai calls them mental constructs, we might call them limiting beliefs. that might be blocking or limiting you from really expressing yourself to the fullest through this human avatar, right? Because those limiting thoughts, those limiting belief systems really are what tend to limit us and block us in our fullest soul expression. So to recognize yourself as, to recognize this physical form and this human construct as an avatar, and then to sense yourself as the soul that's broadcasting through that, is an incredible realization to have on your human journey. It's incredibly liberating. And that sort of, I think, fits into to some of the things you're interested in talking about on your podcast as well. So
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's so wild that we're having these conversations, but my yeah, I
it's
just put my
leading
consciousness
edge.
aside. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
tip
it's
of the
leading edge.
spear on like consciousness evolution. How does
Mhm.
one like transfer or have their consciousness move aside? You know?
Yeah, so I can only speak to my journey with that. So I maybe 20 years ago, maybe a little more than 20 years ago, I started having experiences with the spirit world. So I started I was a makeup artist at the time, and I started having psychic experiences. Then I started having experiences interacting with people's loved ones in the spirit world. That got me interested in mediumship. So very long story short, I started studying mediumship primarily, and then I started becoming interested in trance mediumship, which is mediumship in an altered state of consciousness. So basically, I move my consciousness to the side. I learned to do that through many moments of practice, many moments of meditation. When we quiet our mind and still our mind, what happens is we start to again recognize that our soul, or who we truly are, is just broadcasting through this this physical form. And so in that altered state, what happens is I'm just able to sort of shift my attention away from broadcasting my consciousness through this form, and just gently allow something else, another consciousness, to come through. Now, some people get really freaked out because they think, oh, you know, she's taking over my body or whatever. I don't experience it that way. I like to say I don't experience it that way. I just experience my awareness sort of moving to my right, and then Sarai sort of broadcasting through my left hand side and sort of out, you know, outwards. So it's a little bit strange. It does have to do with altered states of consciousness, brainwave states. But what I can say is the more that you practice it through meditation, the easier it becomes. It's rather difficult to do when you don't have a meditation practice and your mind is very chattery, which, to be honest, like most of us have very active chattery minds, right? And so it requires a degree of stillness, not only in the mind but also in the body. That's something that is cultivated over time. So it's been many, long story short, again, it's been many years of practicing, and also
Sure.
just having really good teachers as well.
What were you doing like during those early days of meditation? Like, was it meditation that you were doing to kind of help move your consciousness aside? Like, what else were you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, it was, but to be honest, I didn't that wasn't my intention. I wasn't sitting to meditate in order to learn how to do this. I was sitting to meditate because I had recently had a baby, and I had pretty extreme postpartum depression and anxiety. And so I just was like finding it difficult to function in everyday life because I had had a traumatic labor experience with my son. And so that sort of, shifted me into this hyper vigilant state where I was sort of on edge all the time. So when I started meditating, it was for that purpose, is just to sort of bring some calm into my system so that I could be a good mother. And then this just started happening. So all of my senses that I had already been exploring, but when I started sitting to meditate every day, all of these senses started to become even more amplified. I also found that after my son, my body was, and my psychic ability, I was more sensitive. For whatever reason, I was more sensitive after that experience. So yeah, when I sat to meditate, all of a sudden I became aware of this what looked like to me just a blue orb of light on my left hand side. So she didn't appear as a being, or I didn't see what she looked like at first. It was just this presence to my left, and that's how it started. It was very subtle. And then over the course of time, it took a few months for me to start to realize, oh, this orb of light is communicating with me. I started writing down just, little tidbits of things that I was getting. And then over time, it progressed to, again, it was sort of unexpected, but I was leading a meditation. And in that altered state that I was in as I was leading the meditation, it was this opportunity for her to speak through me. And so I think when I came out of my altered state leading meditation, I had said to my friend, I was like, that wasn't me speaking. That was, this guide that I've been working with. So this has all just sort of happened. I wouldn't say that I was planning it or intending it. It just all, has happened over the course of about 20 years, this
Mm.
unfoldment. So,
How do you discern like the messaging? How did you know like who this entity was, this blue orb?
yeah.
Did you see it with your physical eyes, or was it with your third eye? And that information, like how do you not have like biases towards it? Like how do you allow it to come through objectively and give you the
Yeah.
information that you need?
Well, I think it's really good whenever you're having this type of experience to have a degree of, maybe you could use the word skepticism, definitely curiosity, discernment is probably the best word to use, because anytime you're interacting, you want to really use your clairsentient ability, which is your psychic sense of feeling, to feel into not only the being but the messaging, to feel into, what does this message feel like? Does it feel uplifting? Does it feel empowering? Does it feel right? And I think so anytime you're connecting in with the spirit world or with these extra dimensional beings, that's got to be your first question. Is this uplifting? Is it empowering? Is it loving? Is it compassionate? If it is, then you know that you're dealing with a higher level being. But if it's anything other than that, if you get a negative feeling when you're interacting, if it's disempowering, if it is sort of, if you feel scared, it's really important to recognize how you're feeling as you're receiving the information. But I think for me, what I noticed about it is the unfoldment of it was so subtle and slow and gentle and not sudden, and it wasn't a shock to my system. What I realized after is that this gentle introduction was sort of helping me build trust in Sarai and in the energy and in the information, build trust over time so that I could really feel for myself, is this information helping me? Is it uplifting me? Is it inspiring me? Right? So it wasn't something that happened suddenly. And I think, and just to answer your question about how I saw Sarai, it was clairvoyantly, but there's a couple different types of clairvoyance. There is the clairvoyance where we see externally, that's objective clairvoyance, but I saw Sarai in my mind's eye. So that's the subjective version of clairvoyance that is much more common. So it's much more common to receive visions with your inner eye and see beings that way. And so it's really interesting when we think of this, the ET phenomenon and all of that, because I think what's really interesting to me is that everybody's expecting them to just like land a ship and just like show up physically. And I mean, it's not that might not happen. Like, I think it probably will happen. However, we have to keep in mind that there are many beings that, in other dimensions, that aren't necessarily of our physical density, that are interacting with us energetically, telepathically, clairvoyantly. And so to be aware of that, first of all, is really important right now, because there are a lot of beings that are seeking to be of assistance at this time.
Yeah, it's so wild because I was listening, or I was doing an interview with someone who channels the Octurian Council of Light, and of course, that's the question I asked, like, who's the first race or who's the first intelligence that's going to reveal themselves to us and to like, notify mankind that we're here. And they basically had a funny answer in that, like, we're doing that right now. Like, we're having this
Yeah.
conversation right now with you. Like, literally, this is contact. And I was
Yes.
like, oh yeah. And then that's when I had this realization about like the Jake Barber disclosure and the different agencies that are releasing some of this information about these bodies being in this craft. It's like that's what they're doing. They're projecting their consciousness down to this dimension,
Yeah.
giving us information, and everyone, we've just been so preconditioned and to think that this is all woohoo, this isn't like legitimate, and to really balk at a lot of the messaging. because it's all, a lot of it is similar, and there is a commonality in it, that we need to work on ourselves, that we need to have more compassion, we have to have more empathy, we
Hmm.
have to do all these things to kind of, better the human race. And nobody really wants to hear that. Like, they're
Yes.
like, they want these grandiose like things to happen. Oh, I want these special spiritual abilities, I want them to give us this technology, but they don't want the hey, you got to be a better person, right? Like, they don't
Yes.
understand, like, in order to get to where you want to go, like, you have to do the work on yourself first.
Yes.
um
100%.
what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's sort of the messaging that Sarai offers too, is that our greatest contribution to the planet right now is not necessarily the actions we take as much as our energetic emanation or our state of being. So when we recognize that we are primarily initially an energetic vibrational being, and that in every moment we're emanating a frequency of vibration, that's the most important contribution for a couple reasons. Number one, because that energy gets fed into the collective consciousness and it affects all other beings that we're interconnected with, which is all beings. So that's number one. But then number two, in regards to action, the quality of your action stems from your state of being or your vibration, right? So just think of it this way: you take very different actions, and you make different decisions from the state of compassion versus the state of hopelessness, right? So if you don't address your energy first and your vibration first, then, you're not going to be led to the action that would be most conducive to being of assistance at this time, for one. But I think people overlook the power of their energy on everyone that's around them. I mean, people and people you don't know. When you wake up in the morning and you're in a bad mood, right? You can see how that affects everyone in your household, right? But if you wake up and you're feeling grateful and joyful and full of life and passionate, that affects everyone around you. What Sarai draws our attention to is that we're affecting, you know, more people than we can really realize with our energetic emanation. And so that's why she's always drawing our attention back to this idea of noticing your state of being moment to moment to moment, meaning recognizing your energy, your frequency, your resonance, your vibration. If you can sense that it's a little bit off, then you do something to shift yourself into a better state of being, whatever that is. It's different for everyone. So, you could go for a walk, you could meditate, do something creative, go to the beach, whatever it is. But that is, one of her primary teachings is realizing where your energy is and addressing that before anything else.
Sure. So,
Mhm.
what has been her biggest impact on you and your life, and how has it changed your reality?
Yeah, well, I mean, I still consider myself to this day a student of Sarai, so I'm continually seeking to embody all of the teachings and all of the work. But I think for me, the biggest thing has been the ability to distance myself, basically from my human construct. So I had a spiritual experience when I was fairly young, about 19, that helped me realize I wasn't the body, but it's through Sarai that's helped me also realize that I'm not my mind. So that process of distancing myself from my mind so I can see what thought forms are running through my mind from moment to moment, and starting to recognize which ones are actually really limiting me, and then questioning them, releasing them. So that's I can honestly say this year 2025 has been like the biggest year for me, because what I'm starting to see is the results of that practice of releasing those limiting beliefs, and then how it shifts my external reality, which of course is our reflection, right? So when we
Mhm.
shift our belief systems, and then the external reality starts to mirror that, it's like all of a sudden, like, things really start to change quickly, right? So for me, there's been a lot of amazing shifts and a lot of opportunities where I'm being called to challenge my the limiting beliefs or thought forms I still have, right? So just like these opportunities that are slightly out of my comfort zone, but that I step into anyway to challenge any kind of fear energy, or any energy in my system that's still limiting me or blocking me. So I feel like I'm going to be a continual student. Like, I don't think this process of evolution ever really ends, but once you get on that train, it's fun and it's liberating and it's exciting and it's passionate, it's adventurous. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
I'm just curious, like, what your limiting beliefs are. I feel like you would have none after channeling an entity, right?
Oh
Like, and
no.
doing
No.
this work.
No, I still no, I'm still getting the opportunities that are or the yeah, the opportunities that are confronting my limiting beliefs. Yeah, so what Sarai says and what I can really identify with is I've overcome, but I also still have uh limiting beliefs regarding my identity and my abilities. So I always, when I look back, especially in my 20s, I always had the limiting beliefs around just feeling not good enough or feeling inferior, right? And so how that manifested in my reality was I was always striving, always trying to achieve. And when I did achieve and when I did get to where I thought I would feel better, it was always like I still felt like I needed to do more or be more, right? And so I still catch my mind going into that pattern sometimes of like feeling like, oh, it's the next thing. I got to get to the next thing, right? And so through Sarai, it's always bringing myself back to the present moment and just recognizing, okay, no, in this moment, I'm enough. I don't have to be more. I'm like, right? Because it's not about what we achieve or what we acquire. We are enough. We're born enough. We are born worthy, right? So we are emanations of source energy. When we are born, we are enough. But there's a limiting thought form that many of us have that it's all about, I'll be enough when I achieve X, Y, or Z, and then I'll feel good about myself. But that's a really limiting thought form because you get there and then the thought form is still active, that you still
Mm.
need to be more. And so then you just have to chase something else. So it's a really subtle difference because I do think we're wired to expand and evolve, right? But the difference is that we're not expanding or evolving to reach a point in time when we're good enough. Right? It's a subtle difference. We're expanding and evolving because that's our nature. That's the nature of the universe. But we're
Mm.
already good enough. We're already worthy. We're already deserving. But it's a subtle little difference, right? But when you witness it, it's like, okay, I am expanding, but also in this moment, I'm enough. So those for me have been sort of my little bugaboos in relation to always having the pattern of trying to be more and do more and achieve more, right? For the purpose of feeling like there's this future point where I'll get to that point in time and I'll feel like, oh, I'm finally there. But we don't get there. That doesn't exist, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
exist. So
it's just a black hole of like,
yeah. Yeah.
it's just like this cycle that we go through. We get
Yeah.
lost
And
in it,
and
and yeah.
yeah, so many people get lost in it too because our culture revolves around that false belief. So there is a lot of messaging that is reinforcing those belief systems. And so it's of no fault of our own because we sort of are born into that even telepathically we're born into those thought forms that are always, pushing us forward into being more. And even if you think of our school system, it's like when I was in school, I just remember it's like grade 1, but you're thinking about grade 2, then you think about grade 3, then you think about high school, then you think about university, and you're always sort of on this hamster wheel of the next thing. And you're
Oh,
never
100%.
acknowledging like who you are in the present moment, right? So,
It's like when we're kids, we want to be adults, and then when we become adults, we want to be kids again.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
so wild. Talk about the experience at 19.
Yeah, so when I was 19, I had an incredible experience. I was visiting my sister on the West Coast, and she took me to my very first yoga class ever, although I had been practicing yoga just with books. But my sister took me to my first class, and so we completed the class, and we were lying in Shavasana, which for those of you that may not be familiar with yoga, Shavasana is the pose at the very end where you just lie on the floor, just sort of absorb everything that you just did through the yoga class. So I was lying in Shavasana when my consciousness popped out of my body, and all of a sudden I was aware that my awareness wasn't attached to my body anymore. So I had a series of experiences. The first one being I had an experience that is really hard to describe, but it was the only way I can describe it is I was everything at once. So I was a mountain, I was the sky, I was a tree, I was a bird, I was a fish, I was the ocean. I was everything, right? So it was this embodiment of just realizing that, I think, as an emanation of source energy, that feeling of being everything, embodied in everything. Some people refer to it as samadhi, the samadhi experience. So that was my first experience. And then following that, I had an experience where all of a sudden I was back in a body, but I wasn't in this Karen body. I was in another body. And it was a sort of past, or what Sarai would say, parallel life memory, where I looked down at my feet and I was wearing sandals and I had this sort of white dress on. And I don't know how I knew, but I just knew that I was in Egypt. Felt like ancient Egypt. And I had this memory of two men walking towards me with a third man sort of in between them, and I knew I could sense that the man in between them was dying. He had been wounded, and I knew that that was my husband. So they're walking towards me, and I'm having this memory or this realization of the moment when I realized that my husband had been wounded in some sort of battle. And so it was just this sort of memory I had of another lifetime that was so impactful and so powerful. And it sort of fast forwarded to a moment after he had passed away, where I was in this place of depression because he had passed away and I had stopped eating. And then all of a sudden I just popped back into this body, and all of a sudden I was in the Karen body again. And then, before I knew it, we were coming out of Shavasana. The teacher was leading us back. And so it was so powerful. Like, I remember my sister driving us back to her house, and I couldn't even talk about it. I was very teary. I was emotional. I was just like, what just happened? But as I sat with it, and as I just sort of allowed that experience to simmer, I just had the powerful realization that, number one, we don't die, right? We are eternal consciousness. I don't think I had that, wording to describe it then, but I had this realization that we are souls, and that we do reincarnate, and that we do have many experiences. This isn't the only one. And so it was an incredibly powerful experience. I got it wasn't my first tattoo. It was my second tattoo. I got the Eye of Horus, just to remind myself of that experience. But it was, really my first real powerful experience, and knowing that who I am is not this body.
Talk about beginner's luck, huh?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm still doing yoga. So that was like, after all this time still practicing yoga. So it was a thumbs up for the yoga experience.
sure. Have you had any similar experiences since in your
I
practices?
I have. I've had other past life regressions, most of them facilitated though. So there's a pretty well-known teacher named Brian Weiss who wrote, I think one of his first books was Many Lives, Many Masters, Only Love is Real. Like, he has a very interesting story, because I think he's a psychiatrist that was just, started to counsel people. And when he regressed them, he started using hypnosis. And when he would regress them, they started popping into these other lifetimes. Anyway, so I've been at events with Brian where I've experienced other lifetimes. And then I've had 2 or 3 QHHT sessions, quantum healing hypnosis technique. That's a technique by Dolores Cannon, where I've talked about other lifetimes that I've lived. That Egyptian one is the only one that really stands out so strong that I can remember it. Like, when I think of these other sessions I've had, I'd actually have to sit and listen to the recording to remember what I said. But I think we have an uncountable number of lifetimes. But what Sarai talks about is that they're not necessarily past lifetimes. They're parallel, meaning that our soul is sort of like broadcasting itself into all of these lifetimes at the same time. It's simultaneous.
Yeah. I was looking at, of course, social media this morning, and
Mm-hmm.
Dolores Cannon always pops up on my feed. I'm a big fan of
Mm.
hers. And she talks
Mm-hmm.
about Atlantis and Lemuria,
Mm-hmm.
and the societies and civilizations that used to be here,
Yep.
and how a lot of um, those entities are now coming back here and incarnating here. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what are they bringing that's changing this place? Like, if like whatever happened to Atlantis, whatever happened to Lemuria, why isn't it still here?
Mm.
And like, what was so, not to sound like, like harsh, but like what was so great about their civilizations that didn't they eventually like self-destruct? Like, what did they do differently than we're doing now? If they were so like greater than we are technologically speaking, consciously speaking, like all these different, spiritual awareness, the connected with our true essence, and like all these
Mhm.
technologies, like basically, if, if they did have this massive self-destruct like event, like I don't know, like should we be listening to them, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm definitely not an expert on that. Although it's really interesting. On my bookshelf back there, I have a really ancient antique book about Lemuria that a friend gave me a few months ago, and I haven't cracked it open yet. But when she gave it to me, it was like this feeling of like, ooh, there's something in this book that is important that I have to read it. I just haven't had a chance.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's just
yeah,
something that I question. It's like if they're so
yeah.
great, right? Like why aren't they still here? And like like I
Yeah,
don't know.
in my mind as you're saying that, I just get the messaging that I hear the words misuse of power. Now, that would be something that we'd have to, look into and look up because again, I don't know I haven't to my knowledge, I haven't had any experiences of Lemuria even in my QHHT sessions or that sort of thing. I don't have any recollection, but yeah, it would be interesting to look that up and just see if that makes sense, misuse of power, right? So,
Wow. Like you think about that. Like we're all working towards this tipping point of consciousness, and
yes.
like if they misuse power and they're supposed to be the greatest civilization ever known, like oh crap, we're in trouble. Like
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully, again, with all these beings that are seeking to be of assistance at this time, like whenever I tune into Sarai, I do get the feeling like these beings are of definitely a higher level of consciousness, right? And so if you think of us trying to tune ourselves almost like an instrument, I'm a musician, and when I get my piano tuned, it's like we're tuning ourselves to that higher level of consciousness where our energy shifts, number one, but again, our actions and decisions shift as a result of that as well. If we can do that energetically first and then start the actions and decisions start to flow from that, I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope, right? But I try to my tendency is to not pay so much attention to what is actually unfolding in this moment, but sort of tune into the higher frequency possibilities and focus on that. Because Sarai talks a lot about needing to access a higher energetic state in order to solve issues and problems, even if that's just our day to day, human issues that we're having or these major problems and issues that humanity is facing. It requires us to step into a higher frequency, and we can't do that when we're focused on the what isness of the problems that are happening right
mm.
now. So
So is your consciousness an aspect of Sarai's, or like what's the difference between Karen's consciousness and Sarai's consciousness?
yeah, so that's an awesome question. So that was revealed again in one of these QHHT sessions because I was really curious about that. Because when I experience her, she very much feels like a completely separate being than me, and in a sense she is. But through QHHT, what she said is that she is a fractal. She and I are, you could think of us as fractals of the same higher self. So when I spoke before about our higher self, incarnating into many different lifetimes at the same time, you could think of the same higher self. So one is coming through and broadcasting as Karen, and then one is coming through and broadcasting as Sarai. What that does is that it creates a sort of pretty solid energetic and telepathic connection between us. So it's very easy for us to communicate. But you could think of us as emanations of one higher self, the same higher self.
Mm, sorry, there's a little bit of lag.
Mhm.
What's the difference between a higher self and the soul?
Yeah, so that sometimes I use those terms interchangeably, but the way that I've come to think of it is the higher self is the aspect of us that never leaves that higher dimension of reality, is always connected in, plugged into source. And the soul is the aspect that does sort of emanate and descend into the human construct. So the way that it was described to me once that I just love is that the higher self is always the one that's sort of holding the map. so so if you think of your higher self as like, it can always see from the higher perspective. It always knows the possibilities. It knows where you could go from where you are, right? It's on the mountaintop, but the soul is still, it's the aspect of you that's divine, but it's in a sense, it's sort of incarnated into this form. So the higher self never leaves that spiritual dimension. So when you connect in, when you plug into it, you start to feel, number one, that energetic emanation or that frequency that is your higher self. But you can always receive higher level guidance from it as well, because again, it always has the map and knows what's best for you from moment to moment.
I love that. The more that I don't know, like, so there was and maybe this is more like a kind of how do I say this? This is more or less like me just being completely honest. But for the last, I would say since COVID, like I was immersed in my spirituality, and I kind of, one, I lost faith in like mass media
Hmm.
and really what the government was obviously, projecting onto us as far as like what, good health looks like and what we should be doing. And so I immersed myself into like spiritual teachings and kind of like buried my head in the sand when it came to like, really living in the external world. And I've just kind of re-immersed and like plugged back into social media, Twitter or X, whatever it is now. And I'm like catching up on all the conspiracy theories. Um, and the biggest thing that I've been learning is like, all the spiritual teachings and like looking at all the things that are making the headlines right now in this world. It's like, how does any of that like correlate? Like how does one live here spiritually, but also like looking at the eye candy, looking at the headlines, looking at all the things that are going viral, and still not allow it to corrupt the soul. Like I really, I don't know. It's so fascinating to me. It's like, all right, how does that help me be a better human being? Because
Hmm.
it's very catchy. Some of the things, the conspiracies that are being talked about. I mean, I'm a big fan of Danny Jones' podcast,
Hmm.
and he has a ton of like conspiracy theorists that come on and talk about different things about like whether or not we went to the moon. Like, did we actually go to the moon? Did we actually land on the moon? And then, like, obviously, the things in the headline with our president right now, and the
Hmm.
different countries that may or may not be, actually running the United States. Like as far as Congress and the Senate and all those things. And
Hmm.
it's like, man, like it just paints this picture of like a dystopia rather than like what everybody's talking about in the spiritual community is like everybody's starting to wake up and we're going to move into this utopia of like more harmony, more compassion, more empathy. And it's like I don't know if I'm seeing the needle move in that direction at all. I'm seeing people being more open to these conversations
Hmm.
about spirituality, about channelers, about mediums.
Hmm.
But as far as like maybe it's just because of the online like um headlines? I don't know how to say it. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I don't know what's true and what's false, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's really, really important discussion, and just to even acknowledge within yourself. I think when we really are attuned to, again, our energy body, we can start to feel with our energy body what's true and what isn't. And I also think of our physical body as a sort of psychic antenna. We can feel in our physical body when we're aware of the guidance, right, coming through. We can feel when something is true and when something is not true. However, what makes that really difficult in this day and age is that many of us are disconnected from our physical body and our energy body, meaning that through media, especially phones, our energy and attention actually is getting pulled out into the device and into the story. And when that happens, when your energy gets sort of distracted and pulled out into the device or into the story, you lose connection with yourself. And you can very easily lose that truth barometer of, is this true? Or does this resonate? Or how does this feel in my system? So, what I'm always seeking in my own life, again, it's hard, is I'm always seeking a bit of a balance. I try to, because of what Sarai teaches about state of being and the importance of our energetic emanation or a vibration, I always try to have some of my attention on how I'm doing or how I'm feeling moment to moment. Now, when that's a priority, what happens is, yeah, you can spend some time exploring these stories, but you start to recognize the feeling of, does it feel like this is pulling me out of myself or disconnecting me from myself, right? First of all, like, does it feel like this is enhancing my connection with my true identity, with my soul, or does it feel like it's distracting me from it? I think the issue that we all need to be really discerning about is that even in the realm of spirituality, like we think, oh, spirituality, right? We think that everyone in spirituality, writing stories about spirituality, we think that those people are all going to have like the best intentions and be of this high joy frequency. Reality is that's not necessarily true. Right? Someone can be very interested in spirituality and still not be coming from a place of compassion or love or service, right? And so the way that people tend to make a living through these stories is through views, right? So everybody's competing for your attention. Everyone's competing for the view so that they can, whatever, for some people it's ad revenue, whatever it
Sure.
is. And so now that's a reality. I'm not saying that that's wrong or bad. It's just that when people are only focused on getting the view without actually being of service, you're going to notice within your body a very different sensation than when you're consuming a story or reading a story or watching a story where someone is really has their heart in it and is really trying to come from a place of service. Right now, that's something you just witness through practice and through discernment and through tuning into yourself. So it's good to have a little bit of a boundary, and when you sense that you're getting into that place where you're starting to feel overly distracted, it's good to have a bit of a media break or like a meditation break to pull your energy and attention back towards yourself so that you can be attuned to yourself. That's the most important thing, so that you can have discernment when you're exploring any story, whether it's related to spirituality or anything else in the media right now.
Sure. Well, I think what's going to happen, and just from what I gather from a lot of my conversations with channelers or people that are doing the work, is that in order for us to proceed to evolve this consciousness, like you gotta, it's kind of like what Jung says, like you gotta make the unconscious conscious. You have to make the dark the
Yes.
light, right? You have to shine
Yeah.
the light on the dark. And so what we're seeing now is the light shining on the dark. The truths that might be revealed is maybe possibly we are controlled by a higher elite system, a higher
Yeah.
class that is
Yeah.
100% completely manipulating the humanity.
Yeah.
um but like, how do you move through that? Like, how do you,
Yeah.
okay, do you just accept it and say, all right, well, I'm a middle class white guy that have to work 9 to 5 and retire at the age of 60? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does that make you a better human being? Like, I mean, how
Mm-hmm.
do you, like, I don't know. It kind of pisses me off to think about, like, we're being controlled and manipulated, right? Like, so
Yeah.
how does one move through this space and this reality, like,
Yeah.
not harness, like harnessing their inner divine power to,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, help others see the light, to help others find their own truths and like see the truth. Maybe that is the truth, but like, how do we
Mm-hmm.
live here?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's an important question, but I think the answer, and the powerful, empowering answer, is to first recognize, pull the curtain back on how the manipulation is actually taking place. And what I see and what Sarai says is that it's through the control of your mind. So when you witness media and you witness these narratives and these stories about what's happening and who you should be and what you should be focused on and what should be important to you, and who you need to be in the world and how much money you should have, and whatever it is, but these are thought forms that are being implanted like a virus in your mind. Now, the point of an empowerment is when you witness that no one can control you, when you distance yourself from your own mind and recognize that you decide what thought forms you hold in your awareness, in your consciousness. Someone can project that at you, right? Of course, people can project stories through the media, through commercials, through ads, through the news headlines. People can project all of this to you, but when you meditate and you distance yourself from your mind, you start to empower yourself because you get to decide if you're going to take that thought form on as truth. When you decide that you're not going to make that thought form true for you, you free yourself, you liberate yourself. You decide what kind of story you're writing in terms of the story of your life, or what you want to believe, or what you want to be true for you. Right. So but again, the danger, I think, with our current society is that there's so much distraction that pulls us out of our connection with ourselves and our awareness of who we are as these souls, right? So when we are distracted, when we're overly distracted on the phone all the time, we're not sitting to meditate, to witness our minds and distance ourselves from our minds, right? So it's almost like there's that reinforcement that's happening through the addictive nature of these devices. So this is why I'm always preaching to meditate, everybody. And so Sarai, it's like, just start meditating 5 minutes a day, 10, 15, and just start to distance yourself from your mind and start to witness that your mind is very much your entire human construct. Actually, Sarai describes as like a computer where your body is the hardware, your mind is the software. You are the one sitting outside the computer. You're the user. You get to decide what software, what programs are running, right? So you decide that, and that's where your empowerment lies, really, truly. You can't be controlled if you distance yourself from the mind and start deciding what you want to hold true for you within your own
Mm,
mind.
I love it. I think this would be a great point to, or a great time to get some channeling from some higher dimensional beings, huh?
Sounds good. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, just give me a moment. I'm going to first just lead you through a little grounding meditation, say a prayer, and then I'll shift my state. Okay.
Sure.
So, been looking forward to this interaction, and we appreciate your participation with this interaction. And to begin with, on this day, before we have a discussion or before we take questions, we would just like to speak for just a moment about the unfoldment of life. And where we'd like to begin is we'd just like to witness and acknowledge and recognize that many of you listening are on this trajectory with your lives of needing to be in the future, or seeking the future in the present moment. In other words, seeking to rush the unfoldment of life, seeking to be in the future, to achieve, to acquire. And so take a very deep breath in this moment and begin to withdraw your energy and attention from that which you call the future, and start to recenter your energy and attention into this present moment in which you dwell, drawing some of your energy and attention towards your breath, your breathing, taking very deep inhales and exhales, and just allowing yourself to reside in this present moment, the most important moment, because this is the moment where you can connect in, plug in to your true identity, your most authentic self. This is the moment in which you can plug in to that true self and begin to create your life from that emanation. If your mind is constantly focused on the future, what happens is you lose your power, you are in a state of distraction, and you begin to lose your connection with your true self and its wisdom, its guidance, its intelligence. So we ask you in this moment, we always continue to ask beings to breathe. We remind them to breathe, because each and every breath reminds you to center yourself in the present moment. And the present moment is your access point to your true identity, your higher self, your true self. So one more deep breath in this moment, drawing your energy and attention back to this moment, and feel this present moment as if this is the only moment that exists and will ever exist. So feeling, acknowledging, witnessing, recognizing that this moment in which you stand will never come again in this way. So feel into the preciousness of this moment and really focus your attention in the here and now. Withdraw your attention from future and refocus it in the here and now. This is where your power is. And so with all of that in mind, how may we be of service on this day? What questions do you have for us?
I want to say thank you for coming here in the now and sharing this moment with me. I think my curiosity lies in our our sovereignty? How do we become more sovereign as entities, as creators?
Well, you become more sovereign by recognizing that your true identity already is sovereign. In other words, your true identity, your soul, the energy of who you truly are, is freedom itself. And so, as you witness that, as you tune into that, as you recognize that, and you feel into that as a frequency, an energy, a presence in the here and now, you begin to recognize that the aspect of you that is experiencing limitation, that aspect of you, while that limitation is, you could say, accurate, that's a temporary experience. It's the experience that you're having because you chose to incarnate here into this realm of duality or contrast so that you could come to recognize and understand and know your true identity through this experience of opposites. But if you're really interested in sovereignty and freedom and liberation, then your access point to those energies or those frequencies is once again this present moment. You have to feel who you are, transcendent of this form, transcendent of the physical form, transcendent of the mind, even transcendent of the personality. There's an aspect of you that is an emanation of the divine intelligence, of source, of God, whatever it is you wish to call that. That's your true identity. When you feel into that true identity, you will instantly feel the sovereignty, the freedom, the liberation that you are seeking. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yes.
So I keep hearing calming the mind and realizing that you're different than the mind, that the mind that is chattering, that is going on day to day, isn't your true identity. So, what is the difference between the mind and the soul?
So the soul we would describe as the witnessing awareness or the witnessing consciousness or the presence that is aware of the mind. Now, there is, you could say, something that you could refer to as the higher mind or divine mind. But the mind that we are speaking of when we say the mind is not your identity is the human mind, which is an aspect of this human construct. And it is a tool, a very important tool that you use in order to create in this reality and also in order to experience contrast, but it is not your identity. And so Karen spoke of this analogy we often use, the analogy of the computer, in which your physical body is the hardware, your mind is the software. You are the one sitting outside of those things. You are the one, you are the user, you are the one witnessing. You're aware of what's arising in your mind. Therefore, you are not the mind because you are witnessing it. But most beings are completely intertwined with their mind as their identity. They think that's who they are. They completely identify with every thought that arises within the mental construct. And that is where you will experience the limitation, the stagnation, the difficulty, because the current state of the human mind is very constrained. It has many different thought forms. Most of them are very limiting in nature. And so when you are identified with that construct, you will, just by the essence of the vibration of that construct, you will feel that limitation, that constraint. So the key or the idea is to break free by witnessing who you are outside of that construct that is the human mind.
Was the human mind created to limit our capability of being that sovereign divine being?
We would say that this entire construct, including the reality in which you live and also the human construct, was created as a way to experience contrast or duality. So it's only when you experience what you are not that you understand, recognize, and truly know what you are. So when you incarnate into the experience of opposites and you feel into that limitation and that constraint, then when you start to feel into who you truly are outside of that, you understand yourself more deeply. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
So that leads
Yes.
me to my next question. How do we transcend this construct, right? Like I talked to KB about some of the conspiracies that are always out there, always going, always on repeat, and it may or may not be true. However, we still have to live in this reality. Like, how do you transcend all of that and really step into that? Like, what are some practicalities that you can give me for the
Yes.
listeners to step more into that sovereignty?
So this will feel overly simple, but you first need to feel into who you are outside of the entire construct. Yes, so the higher self is never really focused in a sense in this construct in the same way that your human self is. So you could think of your higher self as always dwelling or existing outside of the construct. It is always in a state of freedom, liberation, joy, unconditional love. So if you feel into who you are outside of the construct, then first of all, some of these stories that are very distracting, some stories are very concerning to your human mind. All of a sudden, those stories, number one, they will start to feel less concerning. And number two, they will start to feel less alluring, meaning you won't feel that you necessarily want to even engage with those stories. There are other things of a higher frequency that may capture your interest. So the first thing is start to feel into who you are outside of the entire construct. Now, that can only truly happen in moments of stillness. So if you are living a very busy life, if you are constantly distracted by your external reality or by your devices or by whatever it is that is distracting in your reality, you have to understand that your true identity or your higher self is a very subtle presence that is, in a sense, in the background most of the time. And so, if you want to plug into or transcend this reality and who you are in this reality, then you have to sit in stillness with no distractions, as difficult as that is in the beginning, and really set an intention to feel into who you are outside of this construct. Now, the word we used, the word feel, is very important because it's important to recognize this isn't a thinking process. It's not that you're going to use your mind to think about who you are outside of the construct, because that will keep you in the frequency or the vibration of the human mind. You have to use your feeling sense, feeling who you are outside of this form, perhaps feeling into your energy body, feeling if you can feel your state of being in this moment, your frequency, your resonance, then you start to feel into who you are beyond that. What happens in those moments is you begin to elevate or uplift yourself into the higher frequency where your soul or your higher self dwells. And then, again, some of these mental constructs, some of these stories, some of these narratives become much less interesting. And so you won't be sucked into spending a great deal of time interacting or reading or witnessing or watching them.
Sure. But like the one thing I did mention is like there seems to be an objective reality where you're playing this persona, you're playing this role, and you have to participate in things that have been a direct effect of that manipulation. Let's say like of, let's say COVID, for instance, a lot of people had to get the vaccination. So it's like,
Yes.
how do you move through this space as a sovereign being, playing the character, but not feeling the effects of the drama?
Yes, so we would say again, now we know this will feel overly simple, but there's an aspect of each and every one of you that is unaffected by what transpires in this reality. This is the witness that we're speaking of, the observer, the higher self. The higher self benefits from every experience, whether your mind interprets it as positive or negative. So understand that in many cases, it's the mind that is interpreting a certain event as having a negative impact, where the soul or the higher self is only witnessing the benefit. Now, we recognize and acknowledge that there are difficult, even traumatic situations or unfoldments in your reality. We're not invalidating that. What we are saying is, in those difficult, traumatic, difficult experiences that beings may have, there is always a benefit in regards to the soul, and that benefit is expansion and evolution. If you think about some of the difficult experiences you've had in your life, but instead of focusing on the difficulty, you start to focus on what the gift or the lesson or the benefit was as a result of that situation or circumstance, you'll start to have a glimpse of what we are speaking of in terms of the evolution of your soul. Because your soul is always focused on expansion and moving forward, and not so much looking behind, but witnessing where one is in this moment, and then noticing where the desire is about moving forward. So if you take your attention off of all that has transpired in the past, even in this moment, you could practice this with us. Start to take your attention off of what you experienced as past and start to focus it on this present moment, start to feel into this present moment, and then start to feel the presence of your soul and feel that energy of moving forward, of holding desire, of intending to expand and evolve and move forward. You'll start to feel a feeling tone of aliveness or a sensation of passion. And this is the vibration of your soul. The soul takes whatever it is that you experience in your life and creates some sort of gift or blessing or lesson out of that experience. And so when you attune your human mind to that perspective, you'll start to feel much more at peace about what has transpired in your past and not so focused on the detriment of it.
Mm. Are you a part of any type of civilization where you're at?
Well, Sarai, the one speaking to you, is a part of a bigger civilization, but is a much different type of civilization than you experience on Earth. We describe ourselves as holding individuality, but not holding physicality in the way that you do on Earth. And so you could think of us in the same way as you think of your angels or perhaps archangels in your reality. In a sense, we oversee other beings that are physical in nature, where we reside. It is difficult at times to describe our civilization because there are no reference points within your reality or within your experience to truly describe what it is like to reside in this civilization.
Well, if you had to dumb it down, like what is one difference between your civilization, and I can probably guess, but like what's the
Yes.
difference between your civilization and ours?
Well, there are many differences in terms of us versus your civilization, but one main difference is we do have the ability to shift our state, or you could say you would describe it as shift our form instantaneously. So in that regard, we can shift our frequency, our vibration, and therefore shift our, not necessarily our form. We don't hold physical form in the same way that you do, but we could shift our state and shift our appearance. If it would, we're searching for words that are the best words to describe it. And so we witness ourselves and we know ourselves as beings that can shift our state and shift our energy and shift our frequency, and we do so intentionally. You are also beings that can shift your energy and frequency, but you don't always use that capability. You are somewhat asleep to that capability.
So how is your experience evolving the aspect of you, your soul?
So, we are learning how to interact and be of assistance to other civilizations in a sort of energetic and also telepathic level. And so, this is how, when we interact with you, we expand and evolve our understanding of how to be of service in the way that we are desiring to through shifting consciousness. But it is only through the experience of doing something that we learn how to do it. That is the same with all of you. You have to step into something and do it before you learn how to do it. So we are learning how to be of assistance to other civilizations that are in certain levels of development, how to assist them through this idea of projecting our consciousness and projecting our message and projecting our energy and helping others shift their state through our interaction and our communication. This is our interest and our passion at this time. And so this is our intention with your civilization.
Where are we headed, right? So that's the moneymaker question. It seems like YouTube nowadays, everyone wants to know where we're headed in 2025. Like collectively in this moment of the now, what timeline are we heading towards?
Yes, well, we always, whenever any being asks us a future oriented question, we tend to pull them back to the present moment. Now, we know that isn't satisfying to the mind, but it is that aspect of the human mind that is always projecting itself into the future that we would say we want to encourage you to pull yourself back into the present moment. And rather than needing to know where it is all heading, now this is both on an individual level and on a collective level, rather than needing to know where it's all heading, instead drawing yourself back to this moment and feeling and recognizing your power in this moment, and then realizing and recognizing that you get to decide where you are headed, where you are going, what you are creating from this powerful present moment, you get to decide that. If you place that power outside of yourself and start to feel that you have no control of that and you are at the mercy of the external events that unfold in your reality, you start to feel that constraint and that limitation. So the key, the answer, as we began with, is always pulling yourself back to this present moment, recognizing who you are in this present moment, which is a being of great power, an emanation of source energy, and then really deciding, when you think about your future, first of all, deciding what energy or frequency do you want to embody. We would say with you, you stated it was sovereignty, freedom, liberation. So you start to feel into that energy or that frequency in this moment. And then the external events, the external reality, if you can anchor that energy, then the external reality starts to reflect that back to you and shape itself to reflect that to you. Because it's all about what you want to embody as this being of light at this time.
How much agency do I have in creating reality, right?
Mhm.
So is my consciousness creating all the conspiracies, all the things, all the narratives, all the stories, or is that collectively taking place?
Well, just notice in this moment that you are creating your reality in the sense that some aspect of your mind is deciding to focus on that, right? There are many different points of focus in this reality. Some people are very focused on that, and some people are not. And depending on what you are focused on, will determine your state of being in the moment. So, we would encourage you to, if when you are focused on those stories, those conspiracy theories, if you feel a sense of upliftment in your body and in your energy body when you're focused on those stories, we would say keep focusing on those stories. But if you feel the opposite, if you feel controlled, if you feel manipulated, if you feel any sense of hopelessness, we would say you'd be better to redirect your attention towards something that feels more empowering. So you notice in the moment that your present moment reality, we're not so much speaking of your future reality that you're creating. We're talking about your present moment reality. Your state of being in this moment is very much determined by where you place your attention. And so notice what feels empowering versus what feels disempowering to you in this present moment going forward.
I love it. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes,
Or
indeed.
now, I should say, thank you for taking the now.
Yes, yes. Well, it is always our pleasure to interact. Is that the end of your questions? Do you have more questions, or shall we close with a brief message?
You can close with a brief message.
All right. So, in this moment, all those listening, take one more deep breath. And as you breathe, really feel that breath flowing into your body, your physicality. And as you exhale, feel that breath flowing out of your physicality. And as you're witnessing the breath flowing in and out, just begin to notice, to feel, to recognize that this body that you're witnessing is your vehicle, your vessel. It is not your identity. And similarly, your mind, full of thought forms, ideas, narratives, you may be very intertwined with that aspect of your human avatar, but we wish to plant a seed in this moment and state that this is also not your identity. This is a tool that you are using to create in this reality. It's a beautiful tool, but it is an aspect of the human construct that holds your power in relation to, as we just said, where you place your attention. Whatever it is that you are holding in your mind, whatever it is that you are thinking about, will determine your state of being, your frequency, your resonance, your vibration. And so it's very important that you notice your state of being in this moment and in every moment. And so we'll leave you with the greeting Sat Nam, which means true identity. We see and sense and feel and know your true identity as beings of light, indestructible beings of light. We hold the energetic frequency of your true identity and beam and broadcast it to you in this moment and in every moment until you can anchor that awareness for yourself. And so Sat Nam on this day, Sat Nam to you.
Okay, bait. She's back.
I'm back. Give me a moment. I'm sorry, my phone went off a couple times. I thought I shut it off, so that
It's all
was
good.
a little
I'm
bit.
literally sitting outside on a deck or a porch, and I have all these people going around me and dogs
Okay,
being
good.
walked. So don't.
All
I'm
good.
surprised you haven't heard like a ton of barking because it seems like
Mm.
everyone's walking their dog right now.
I didn't
Um,
hear that, but I was like, oh my gosh, my phone. Anyways, all good. Speaking of
you're good.
distraction, right? Speaking of
Yeah, right.
distraction.
Wow.
Yeah.
Karen, I can't thank you enough. This has been a delight. I just love your energy. I love how you are just so easy to talk to, and like your
Aw,
teachings
thanks.
and your stories are so fascinating to me. So thank you.
Mm. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun for me as well.